And it just turns out that there's this eerie coincidence, if you want to say that. I'm not so sure it's a coincidence, but this black cube just turns up in all kinds of places unexpectedly.
You just would not think, especially with Islam, you just would not normally think that they would worship. Everybody goes around
The Kaaba,
that cube,
the black cube.
Kaaba. I
Yeah.
mean, it's all about the black cube. Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to another edition of the Uncensored Pilgrims. I'm Marty McLain, along with the irrepressible
Paul Price.
Paul Price. And Paul Price and I, we're going to talk today about a black box.
Yes.
And we're not talking about the airplane.
No, we're talking about 21st century church history, right?
Yes.
Along with every other episode of our podcast.
Yes, now we're in the 21st century. We have completed our series on church history from the 1st century through the 20th century. Now we're talking about some contemporary issues.
Yes,
and
back to our normal schedule of contemporary / conspiracy related / unusual.
You know, there's a lot of
blurry
things.
Creatures.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that people in the church want pastors to address, but I'm not necessarily going to preach a sermon on some of these topics.
Maybe not everything.
But they want to know.
Yeah.
They want to have a biblical framework when they have to talk about topics like, a black box.
Yeah.
Or time travel, or aliens, or out-of-body experiences, or Tower of Babel, or what about a flat earth? And we've covered a lot of these topics. And that's kind of what we do. We kind of bat things back and forth about contemporary issues, about some strange stuff.
Yep.
And I think that the world has...
This definitely qualifies as a strange thing.
Yes, it is. And we're talking about a black cube.
A black cube.
So, Paul, what do you have to say about a black cube?
Well, I first heard about this topic years ago, back in, I don't know, maybe some people might refer to it as the golden age of YouTube. But
which would be when?
Well, probably somewhere between the years of 2010 and 2015. During those years, YouTube got inundated with a lot of conspiracy-related content. And a lot of people got into a lot of weird stuff. Some of it, I think, was interesting and maybe uncovered some interesting things that a lot of people had never heard of before. This being one of those things, when I saw people talking about this so-called cult of the black cube. But then there was a lot of other garbage that was coming out on YouTube in those days as well. And that's when the whole flat earth cult got started as well, from that same bunch of conspiracy videos. So, I'm not saying all that stuff was good, but this is one of those topics that I had never heard of before, but it turned me on to thinking about it and looking into it a little more. And it just turns out that there's this eerie coincidence, if you want to say that. I'm not so sure it's a coincidence, but this black cube just turns up in all kinds of places unexpectedly.
We were just watching, even last night, we started watching this series on Apple TV called Dark Matter. Mm-hmm. And this guy travels to alternate universes, and he does so in a black box. And I was like, wait a second. Paul's been talking about this black cube, and this guy's doing interdimensional travel.
Yeah.
By going into a black box where light cannot penetrate.
Yeah.
And it's intriguing series. Now, we watch it with the VidAngel. It takes out all the cuss words, any objectionable scenes. So I'm not endorsing this unless you have a filter to watch the series through, which you can stream it through VidAngel, and it takes out all the unnecessary words and scenes. But the whole premise of that show centers around a black box that a guy has made, and he can travel into other dimensions.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And the more you pay attention, you see this black cube all over the place in various places, on logos and on pieces of artwork. And
Mecca?
In Mecca.
I think the United Nations has a black cube on display.
I think they do. So it's just all over the place. And
why a black cube?
Why a black cube? Well, now I'm not putting myself forth as an expert by any means, but basically there's some type of a historical connection to an occult worship of the planetary god known as Saturn, yes. Saturn, the sixth planet from the sun, I believe. Isn't that correct?
Man, I've been out of school for so long. I know that Pluto was a planet and then it wasn't a planet. Now it is a planet.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big issue on one of those TV series, Psych. I think it was a big issue with one of the guys on there. But it's Saturn. There actually is, at one of the polar ends of Saturn, there's something, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, this is the weird thing about the whole deal. Saturn is in fact the sixth planet from the sun. And lo and behold, Saturn has a crazy meteorological phenomenon on its pole, one of its poles. And it's a storm that is formed into the shape of a six-sided figure. So the storm on the pole of Saturn is a hexagon, which is just bizarre. And it's the sixth planet from the sun. So all of these weird Saturn and six related coincidences seem just odd, don't they?
Yeah.
It seems like the ancients, the ancient pagan, peoples knew something about this somehow. I don't know how they would have known this information, but you can look at ancient depictions of Saturn worship, and you'll see that it's connected with a six-pointed star, which is also known as a hexagram, which is also associated with all kinds of occult practices. The occult world uses the six-pointed star or hexagram quite a bit. The weird thing about that is that the internal portion, if you just look at the inside of the six-pointed star, it's once again, a hexagon. So I don't know, I can't tell you. This is, again, it's like occult and kind of like mysterious.
Yeah.
And as Christians, we're not supposed to get too far into the occult, but at the same time, we are supposed to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And part of being wise as a serpent is at least being aware of what's going on around you and understanding when you are looking at things that are references to the occult. I think it's good to at least be aware of that, don't you?
Yes.
As a Christian?
Yes.
Because it helps us have better discernment.
Now, let me ask you something. In Mecca, there's a black box.
There is a giant black cube.
In the middle of where all the pilgrims go.
Yes.
And it has a stone that's kind of broken into pieces. And
yes.
Of course, when people take their, what do you call it, the Hajj?
The Hajj, the pilgrimage.
The pilgrimage to Mecca, you have to go 7 times counterclockwise around the black cube, and then a lot of people either touch or kiss that stone, or they try to anyway. And the stone's black, and they say the reason why it's black is that it was originally given to Adam when he got kicked out of the garden, and that the stone has absorbed the sins of the people who touch it or kiss it.
Yeah, that's certainly not biblically accurate, and it's a bizarre practice. I think it's a story that was made up after the fact because. I'm
not saying it's accurate. I'm saying that's the word on the street.
But I think it was even made up after the fact with respect to Islam, because the black cube, the Kaaba, predates Islam itself. And it was in fact being used by the pagan tribes for religious reasons before the founding of the religion that we today call Islam.
Yeah,
so it's an ancient pagan thing.
Here's what it says about the Kaaba today. This is from Smart History. It says, today the Kaaba is a cubical structure now.
Yeah.
Unlike almost any other religious structure, it is 15 meters tall and 10.5 meters on each side. Its corners roughly align with the cardinal directions. The door to the Kaaba is now made of solid gold, and it was added in 1982. The Kiswa, a large cloth that covers the Kaaba, which used to be sent from Egypt with the Hajj caravan, today is made in Saudi Arabia. So you got this cubicle structure, even in Mecca.
Even in Mecca.
With the Muslims who are not supposed to worship any objects.
Yeah.
It's very, that's very taboo, but yet there's this object that they all circle around in the middle of Mecca, in the middle of their religious universe.
Yeah. It's very strange.
And they have to touch or kiss something.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's just one more of the many places where you see this black cube come up in various religions and various practices. I'll tell you a more recent example where it came up is, I don't know that we've ever mentioned this podcast before on our podcast, but a podcast that I've been listening to quite a bit is known as Almost False. And I like a lot of what's on there. Not everything is that is on there I would endorse or like, but I like a lot of the uploads.
Okay.
But my all-time favorite on that podcast is an interview with a guy by the name of Cody. And this guy has one of the craziest testimonies I've ever heard from anybody. And we've had an episode, Marty, on out-of-body or near-death experiences before.
Yes.
And he had one where he left his body, and according to him, he was taken straight to hell.
Okay.
Or maybe, I don't know what the correct word we would use. Would it be Sheol, hell? I'm not sure. Outer darkness. Mm-hmm. But in any case, wherever he was taken, according to his testimony, he saw a holding place for false prophets and false religious leaders. And it's very interesting. I highly recommend I don't recommend it for young children or anything along. It's for something for adults to listen to. But his testimony of going down into this place is fascinating. And he claims to have seen a religious figure there. And this religious figure is none other. Well, I'll be spoiling the surprise if I say who it was, but basically he's a certain gentleman that we might know from the 1800s who might be associated with the Mormons.
Yeah.
If that isn't giving it away.
Joseph Smith.
Our boy Joseph Smith. He claims to have seen Joseph Smith in his afterlife hellish state. And I'm not going to go into the whole story, but the part that's relevant here to our topic today of the Black Cube is that he witnessed this demonic entity come and present itself to Joseph Smith, and this is the demonic entity that gave Joseph Smith his false doctrine. Mm-hmm. And this entity was in the form of a black cube when it first entered the picture. It wasn't until it needed to disguise itself as a giant golden angelic figure, Moroni. It wasn't until it disguised itself that it went out of that shape. Mm-hmm. But it entered the picture as a black cube. Which is odd, isn't it?
That is odd. And, when somebody has an experience like that, that's so subjective. I mean, they have these experiences. But one thing, if you do look at Mormonism and Islam, you do find a lot of similarities between, Muhammad being visited by Gabriel and Joseph Smith being visited by Moroni. I think
there's a weird commonality there between Islam and Mormonism.
Yeah, Joseph Smith was given his stuff in Egyptian, I think, hieroglyphics maybe.
Yes.
And then Muhammad was given his in Arabic.
That in his testimony.
Yeah, and so they both...
But they both had there's a connection to a black cube for both of them.
Refer to Jesus, but yet this revelation goes beyond Jesus.
Yes.
They have their own book, whether it's the Quran or the Book of Mormon. They are into polygamy.
That's true. They are both into polygamy.
They do believe in marriage after death.
Interesting.
And when you wouldn't normally think that Mormon theology and Islam had similarities. Just if you put the two people, a Mormon next to a Arab Muslim, but the origin of these two religions are very similar. And you almost think, when Paul said in Galatians, if I or an angel preach to you any other gospel,
that's true.
Let him be accursed.
Yes.
So does Satan have a pattern?
There's also a commonality in the legalism they have with respect to their diet.
That's true.
The Mormons aren't allowed to have coffee, tea, or alcohol.
Yep.
Right? The Muslims have a dietary restriction as well.
And they're both real big in proselytizing.
Yeah. So there's a lot of commonalities, but one of those commonalities is, strangely, at least according to Cody, this connection with the black cube.
Okay.
So that was another thing that kind of caused my ears to perk up when I heard that, and I thought, black cube, that is really strange that he said that.
Yeah, and you just would not think, especially with Islam, you just would not normally think that they would worship, everybody goes around that
the Kaaba,
cube,
the black
Kaaba.
cube.
I mean, it's all about the black cube.
Yeah.
And let me this is just another thing. The meditation room at the United Nations, it was established in 1952, and Sweden donated the 6-ton iron ore stone altar. Now, this is from the United Nations, their own publication. So they refer to it as a 6-ton iron ore stone altar as a sign of permanence in a world of change. So that they call it an altar. They have a black cube in the meditation room at the United Nations.
And they call it an altar.
And they do call it an altar.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to get too far down a rabbit trail, Paul, but, there might be a little something to a black cube. And like I say, even watching TV last night, all of a sudden the guy does interdimensional travel.
Yeah.
In a black cube.
Yeah. Yeah, and why is it
Paul,
a
if
black
anybody
cube?
tries to put you in a black cube, don't let them.
I will not, no.
Okay.
It's just interesting. There's this connection with Saturn. Saturn is referred to as the black sun or a black star.
Mm-hmm.
And then, again, the connection to the cube is the 6-pointed star being a symbol of Saturn, and then the interior portion of that 6-pointed star takes the appearance of a cube when viewed from an angle.
Now, the nation of Israel in the Old Testament, during the time of the divided kingdom, they had given themselves over to the worship of Saturn.
Yes,
and
the Bible records that.
That is in Amos. What do we say? Amos chapter 5, verse, was it 27, 28?
Yes, so it's actually Amos chapter 5, and starting at verse 25, it says, "Did you bring to me sacrifices and offerings during the 40 years in the wilderness, O house of Israel? You shall take up Sikkuth your king, and Kiyun your star god, your images that you made for yourselves, and I will send you into exile beyond Damascus, says the Lord, whose name is the God of hosts." So, and this is all caps, Lord.
Yeah.
Really, it's Yahweh.
Right.
So Yahweh is saying, he's calling them out for their worship of Saturn.
So it was a thing back then.
Because Kiyun, by the way, is understood. This Hebrew word Kiyun, is understood to be a reference to Saturn, the planet Saturn.
Right.
So even in the
astral deities,
even in the time of the book of Amos in the Old Testament, the worship of Saturn, the false god Saturn, was connected somehow with a star.
Yeah.
And so you see all of these pieces kind of fitting together mysteriously. You get another reference in the New Testament in the book of Acts.
Okay.
And this is actually, I believe, during Stephen's speech.
Right.
If anybody wants a nice, concise, overview of the Old Testament
history, he gave it to him before they hit him with rocks.
Right before he got stoned, Stephen gave a great little synopsis, if you will, of the Old Testament.
You're right.
And thrown in amongst that synopsis, Stephen said, "And they made a calf in those days and offered a sacrifice to the idol and were rejoicing in the works of their hands. But God turned away and gave them over to worship the host of heaven, as it is written in the book of the prophets." So Saturn would be one of the hosts of heaven, right? Did you bring to me slain beasts and sacrifices during the 40 years in the wilderness, O house of Israel? You took up the tent of Moloch and the star of your god Rephan, and the images that you made to worship, and I will send you into exile beyond Babylon. This sounds a whole lot like what we just read out of Amos. So this seems to be Stephen referencing back to Amos, basically. But here in the New Testament, a different word is used, Rephan, but it is again another reference to Saturn.
Yeah.
So either way, this star god, this pagan star god is referenced, and it is a Saturn worship.
Yeah.
So we do see this connection. Now, I'm going to throw another connection at you,
Throw it, man.
Marty,
Throw it.
and you're going to like this one because this is a CERN connection.
Oh, yeah.
We have a CERN connection here. So we all know that CERN, among its many other things that it's connected with, it's connected with the World Wide Web. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Well, I found a clip from Ben Segal. He is, quote-unquote, an internet promoter and the mentor of the actual inventor of the internet, Tim Berners-Lee, who isn't Al Gore, by the way.
Yes.
But here's an interesting thing that you can find out about that first web server, that very first web server. What do you think it was? I'm going to play this clip for you here.
All right, let me have it.
This is Ben Segal speaking, and this is actually the official YouTube channel of CERN.
He was in a position to ask for a computer that he wanted to prototype this on. And I also will never forget the day when, about 2 or 3 months later, I think this was ordered in May of 1990, Tim rushed in my office and said, Ben, it's arrived, come and look. And I went in his office and I saw this sexy black cube, and he was just setting it up.
So
A sexy black cube.
A sexy black cube.
What's that all about?
Well, the name of it is the Next Computer, NEXT.
So your next computer is just going to be a black cube?
It's a black cube. That's what it is. Next Computer, and it's in the shape of a black cube. Isn't that bizarre? Why? But our internet came to us from a black cube.
Huh.
Very strange, isn't that?
You know, here's
a sexy black cube, no less.
Here's an article from I got recently. I was looking up some stuff, and it says, quote, hidden symbolism in plain sight. Taylor Swift black box video sparks occult allegations online. So there's some type of, I don't know what that's all about. I'm not a big fan of, I'm not a fan, period, of Taylor Swift. I believe, one thing I told my boys before, I said, look, if a girl ever wants you to go to a Taylor Swift concert, it means your relationship is ending.
Oh.
Yeah. It means it's going down the tubes.
I'll put this on the screen on YouTube for our YouTube audience, and I'll show it to you right now, Marty. This is the Next Computer that gave us the internet.
It's a black box.
It's a black box, a black cube.
A black cube computer.
Uh-huh. Yep.
It's
truly interesting that it holds a certain prominence in history, if you will.
Okay.
Now, there's another black cube going around out there in the news right now. It's an elite private investigating
security force.
Security
yeah,
force.
I've seen that.
Apparently, Harvey Weinstein is using them.
Oh, goodness.
That's why it's in the news.
Not Harvey, the guy that goes after people.
Yeah, but here's what Black Cube is. It's a private intelligence agency based in London, Tel Aviv, and Madrid. The company was founded in 2010 by former Israeli intelligence officers. It's called Black Cube. I don't know what to make of that, but
everybody's into the black cube now.
But basically, everywhere you look, you're going to have the black cube staring back at you. It seems like there's another place that you might see black cubes, and that is on web pages designed by the well-known web creation platform called Squarespace.
Oh yeah, I used to use Squarespace.
But a lot of times if you go to a website that's from Squarespace, you'll see a little black cube on the internet tab there. That's like their logo, or at least it used to be. I don't know if it still is, but Squarespace uses a black cube as well.
Huh. So somehow, some people may, if somebody's a conspiracy theorist, and we're not saying we're conspiracy theorists, we're just trying to, see what all is going on out there, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But if somebody says, okay, there's a black cube that's associated with things that are mysterious.
We might even say occult.
And yet you have a black cube at the United Nations. You have the guy at CERN talking about a sexy black cube, whatever in the world that is.
Yeah.
You have the next computer is a black cube. Now, is that just the design's a black cube, or it functions in some capacity different than a computer does now?
I think it was just the aesthetic design of it. They just made it into a black cube.
Because they like black cubes.
Yeah, I even have a black cube here at the house. It's a Nintendo GameCube, believe it or not.
Okay.
And it's black. It just
so
happens to be.
You're part of what's happening.
I guess I'm part of the problem now.
Oh, goodness. I need to get out of the basement.
So, yeah, I don't know. But, I don't think we're suggesting to our audience here that we need to be... First of all, we're definitely not suggesting that you get into the occult or start, delving too deeply into reading up on the occult, because that in and of itself can be a trap. Yes. I don't think you need to delve too deeply into the occult.
No, you don't need to delve into it at all.
You don't need to delve into it at all.
Stay away from that stuff.
But you also do need to at least be able to recognize the signs of the occult when you see it. Mm-hmm. And to me, the hexagram and the black cube and Saturn are all symbols that seem to be in some way
you have
connected with the occult.
You have a pentagram and you have a hexagram.
Yes, and both of them are used in the occult, both the pentagram and the hexagram. And everybody knows about the pentagram,
sure,
but I think the hexagram isn't maybe as widely understood to be used in the occult, but it certainly is.
Okay.
And so, and it's also used all over the place, all over the world in different pagan religions. So... I don't think we have any hard and fast answers here. This isn't an easy topic where we can just say, well, here it is. This is what it means. This is hidden. The occult is hidden. That's what occult means.
Yeah.
And the Bible doesn't tell us everything about it, but it does tell us that this Saturn star god is a pagan deity, which we know is demonic.
Yeah.
So, stay away, be aware that when you see these symbols being flashed around in places, you should, I guess the point is you can be aware that there's some type of hidden, deeper meaning behind this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess it's also just kind of another little reminder for us when we see these things that we live in a world where we're doing spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain all of this as just one big weird coincidence.
Yeah.
But as a Christian, we don't have to believe that it's a big weird coincidence, because we know that we wrestle against cosmic principalities of evil.
Right.
And so when you see their calling card sprinkled around all over the place, that shouldn't be a surprise, right? That's kind of what we should expect to see.
Yeah, I've got this thing. This is Wikipedia. It says the hexagram, like the pentagram, was and is used in practices of the occult and ceremonial magic and is attributed to the 7, quote, old planets outlined in astrology.
Yeah.
The 6-pointed star, commonly used both as a talisman and for conjuring spirits and spiritual forces in diverse forms of occult magic.
Yeah.
So, you have this connection with Saturn, with the black cube.
And just to make it a little clear again, because I think it can be easy to miss this, is that what is the connection between a 6-pointed star and a cube? It's that when you tilt it to its side and look at it from an angle, the two-dimensional outline that you can see there is a hexagon. Mm-hmm. And the hexagon is the interior portion of the hexagram or the 6-pointed star. So that's, I guess, in some way the connection there. But all of these things go hand in hand. And even in the book of Revelation, when we read about the number of the beast, it's again connected with 6, 666. What is the meaning of that? 6 repeated 3 times. I don't know. There's a mysterious connection between this number 6, when you see it in this kind of numerological sense,
Right.
and kind of, I guess, evil or incompleteness. I don't know. Again, I don't think we need to get into numerology too much, because it can be a gateway into the occult.
Right.
But
and you need to be careful about having a lot of interest in any of this stuff.
yeah.
But we do have people ask.
There's a fine line between being aware of it and equipping yourself and going over the edge.
So if somebody comes and says, Paul, what's this stuff about Saturn worship? What's this stuff about a black cube?
I'd say listen to our podcast episode.
Listen to our podcast episode.
That's what I would say.
That's what you say. Well, we know that as the world gets closer and closer to the return of Christ, there's going to be a heightened awareness of spiritual, of spiritual activity.
Yeah, and I think the occult is coming out into plain view more and more.
What used to be whispered about,
Yeah,
is now being openly displayed.
yeah,
And the amount of the occult and the amount of people who are spiritual but not biblical.
yeah.
And, you've got people that are outwardly satanic now and outwardly doing occultic symbols.
It's very popular now. It's been growing popular for a long time. It was popular, probably, it started getting a big boost in popularity starting in the 80s and 90s.
Well, when I was growing up, the way they did it, of course, this was the word on the street, is that you'd get these records and you had to play them backwards.
Yeah, I remember that.
And there'd be like...
And there'd be a secret message on it.
Secret message and all that kind of stuff. But nowadays they do they do their symbols, and their videos are overtly satanic. Have you seen the new portrait of King Charles III?
No.
Many say...
Don't tell me there's a black cube.
Many say if you take his picture and you duplicate it and put it side by side, I have seen it. It's a picture of, some say, how do you say it, Baphomet?
A Baphomet. Wow.
Yeah.
That's another evil symbol for sure.
It is. I don't know why he chose the artist that he chose, and I don't know why this guy would paint such a picture. It literally looks like he is in the flames of hell.
That's bizarre.
It is one of the craziest things that I have ever seen. Next to Obama's picture when he's in the kudzu, his presidential portrait.
That looks weird.
Yeah,
that looks like something you'd see on AI or something.
Yeah,
like
AI
generated.
When they unveiled it and they showed it, it's almost like you're thinking, okay, it's like I say, like when they
is it like a joke or something?
Yeah, when they did Obama's, and Obama's, he's like in amongst kudzu or ivy.
Yeah, that. I remember that being odd.
And it was like, is this really a presidential portrait? I mean, is this like for real?
Yeah.
And then when you see King Charles's picture, and then when they put it side by side, you're thinking, okay, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but why even have an appearance that the man is in the midst of flames?
Yeah.
I don't know why they would do a picture like that. And I sure, they think, if you saw the Crown, when Winston Churchill saw his picture, he didn't like it. And I would imagine, Paul, if somebody sat down and painted one of our pictures, I don't know what I hope they would have a sense of reality when they would paint it.
Yeah, and I would hope that it wouldn't come out looking like Baphomet.
Yeah, and I hope they wouldn't have me in flames.
Yeah, I don't know. That is odd.
It's bizarre. And you can actually see it when they do it side by side.
Yeah.
And
but see, the skeptics see all of this stuff, and they always just say, "Oh, well, you're just seeing what you want to see, and you're
I don't want to see
reading it into there."
But I don't want to see it.
Yeah,
I don't want to see that stuff, man. But it is truly it is a bizarre. If you've not seen King Charles III, I always call him Prince Charles. No, he's King Charles, obviously. King Charles III. If you've not seen his portrait,
Yeah.
You need to look it up.
Yeah.
It is. I think it's more bizarre than President Obama's portrait.
Yeah. I can see that. But I think basically the upshot of this is that the demonic realm is real, and for some reason they like to leave their calling card in places. They like to drop little hints around.
The programming, they like to let you see what they're going to do sometimes before they do it.
Yeah, the predictive programming.
Predictive programming, some would say, and maybe that's a conspiracy. I don't know, but you start getting that. You start seeing some themes in movies. It's like when we started talking about portals. Now all the movies have what? Portals.
Yeah.
Portals are all in your movies now.
Yeah.
And there's some people say portals are in the Bible, and and people have questions about this.
Yeah.
And they want to ask, hey, what do you think about portals? And what we try to do is we try to at least give you some type of a grid where you can have a halfway intelligent conversation about it.
Yeah.
Because with this the physics they got, the quantum physics and all kinds of stuff that's going on now, and with CERN, with the colliders, there's a lot of things that are going on that you got to understand. There is a spiritual realm, and some people think that these folks are delving into some stuff in a spiritual realm that they don't need to.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I definitely think that you can see evidence of that, and when you see this black cube kind of sprinkle it around, popping up in unlikely places.
So Paul, I'm gonna have my eyes open for the black cube.
Yeah, I think. Of course, we don't want to be guilty of seeing demons under every crevice and rock.
But I will tell you this: things have changed.
Yeah,
things are there's like something's to me from a spiritual point. This is a guy I've seen demonic manifestations. I know this stuff is real.
Yeah.
But it seems like to me that there's been something opened up.
Yeah.
Something's opened up that used not to be opened up.
Yeah.
And it seems like there is a greater frequency.
Well, when your culture, we used to have a Christian culture more so than we do now, by far more. And, I think that was kind of a check on that demonic influence. But as we are embracing paganism and all forms of occult practices, and you are going to see it open up, and you are going to see more manifestation, I think.
Yeah.
So, back in the 90s, you almost couldn't turn on TV without it being something about fortune telling,
right, tarot
cards, quote unquote magic shops, which often are connected with occult objects and occult things. And it was being marketed to all ages. Mm-hmm. So, people just think stuff like that, Ouija boards and all of that, they just think it's harmless fun. That's how it's treated.
That's like when it comes to even stuff like Harry Potter and all that. I'm like...
Now you're touching
the third rail for some people. That stuff's electric. But somebody who also has had dealings with witches.
Yeah.
And I see a book that makes witchcraft makes it look good, right?
That's the thing. I do squirm a little bit when I'm not going to come down and say it's a sin and you should never let your kids read Harry Potter. I'm not going to be that dogmatic about it, but I will say...
Can I be that dogmatic? I would not let my children read Harry Potter.
All right.
I just wouldn't. I know there's some people out there say, I don't see a problem with it. Well, if you think what the Bible says about witchcraft and all that is in agreement with Harry Potter, then we just have a serious disagreement.
Yeah, I guess it's a debatable. You're going to have disagreement because after all, it is just a fiction book, right? But the problem is.
It piques people's curiosity into the witchcraft.
It does kind of glorify witchcraft, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm,
it makes it into a positive thing when the Bible says it's the very opposite.
Well, there's good and bad magic.
Yeah, but the Bible doesn't teach that at all, does it? It doesn't teach that there's such a thing as a good witch or a bad witch, a good wizard and a bad wizard.
No.
And then you're going to have people say, well, okay, then doesn't that mean that the Lord of the Rings is evil because it has wizards in it?
It does have wizards in it.
But I would draw a distinction between Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings, because in the Lord of the Rings, the word wizard is used, but it doesn't really seem like, if you really understand Lord of the Rings, it's a wizard in the Lord of the Rings is really not just a guy who's doing witchcraft and occult stuff. It's actually an angelic being, is what the wizards are in the Lord of the Rings. They're angelic beings that actually are being sent to Earth. So I guess if you want to split hairs there...
So are they different from Legolas or whatever his name is?
They are.
Okay.
Legolas would be an elf.
Yeah, where elves are not symbolic of the...
They're
angels.
not angelic. The elves are considered to be an unfallen race.
An unfallen race, okay.
That's what they are in Lord of the Rings. But the wizards in the Lord of the Rings are angelic beings.
Okay.
They're beings that pre-existed, like they were around before the Middle Earth was created, and then they were sent there to help the people on Middle Earth.
Yeah, I just know this. There are certain, you don't want to, life is hard enough, and there's enough of a spiritual battle going on without exposing your kids.
I think you got to be careful with it for sure.
To the fun aspect of witchcraft with
making it seem
Harry
like
Potter.
it's fun and positive might not necessarily be the most
And
discerning
I know there are people
thing.
disagree with me, but I'm not going to. I won't change my opinion.
That's fine. I'm partially in agreement with you. I'm a little bit less dogmatic, but I still see the dangers of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little bit on the fence about it, but I see the dangers of it for sure.
Have you read Harry Potter?
I may have never read one of the books. I remember years ago listening to some of them on audio, but I don't think I listened to the whole series. I think I listened to some of them. And I found them to be a little bit entertaining. They're
entertaining. You got good character development. I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good literature. I think that's a part of it that people like. They like it because it's very well written. Character development.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's as good as the Lord of the Rings by any means.
But at the same time, you're glorifying witchcraft.
Yeah, I mean, that is the whole point of it.
And
it's like a witchcraft school.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. Okay, well, we just want to give some folks a heads up about this black cube.
This black cube. I mean, there's not a whole lot more we can say about it because to go further is,
it's speculative. It's more and more speculative.
You get more and more speculative. Yeah. And a lot of these YouTube channels that talk about it, they're not Christians.
Yeah.
And they're not promoting a biblical understanding of these things. Mm-hmm. So you really got to be very careful about it. But I think the reason we just wanted to talk about it was to...
Again, it does have some traction in our society.
It's got traction, and just to have that discernment and be aware of what it can be connected with.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah,
I think that's the point of it.
Okay, we just want to help, and we are the Uncensored Pilgrims who try not to be censored, but sometimes we
do get censored.
We get censored. So, well, Paul, thank you for making me aware of the black cube.
Yep, I think next time we'll talk about another interesting topic. I know one of the topics you've been wanting to delve into is that crazy Denver airport.
We will probably be addressing the Denver airport.
Yeah.
So we will see you next time on the Uncensored Pilgrims. And we need to let you know that the views that we express on this podcast belong to Marty McLain and Paul Price. They are our views. They do not reflect the views of anyone else. And with that said, we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the podcast.